Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 2nd, 2021 workshop and City Council meeting. This session will be conducted remotely and council members will only participate electronically. For those viewing online, please ensure that you join this meeting using the following website address, www.lewistonmaine.gov/2021cc. If you join this meeting using any other link, we encourage you to rejoin the meeting using the correct website address. Public comment on any item appearing on the agenda may be sent to publiccomment@lewistonmaine.gov prior to adjourn the meeting, and all comments received will be forwarded to the City Council. Members of the public who are logged into the meeting online can make a comment when invited to do so by raising your hand button in the lower center of your screen. Once you are acknowledged, your microphone will be unmuted and then you will be invited to make a brief comment. And councilors are asked to raise their hands to make comments as well. And with that, we'll move to the workshop session. And we have one item this evening, which is a city spirit presentation in reference to an equity statement. And how many folks are we bringing into that? Administrator Dote.
We have, good evening, Mayor, City Council. We have Fatuma Hussein and Laura Ligori. So Dale will be moving them in here. Probably I see them coming in right now.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
How are you? Thank you for coming this evening.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to present on this work.
Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so Laura and Fatuma, you're all set. The floor is yours.
Fatuma, do you want to start us out?
Yes, good evening. Thank you all so much for having us here tonight. And I wanted to just say my name is Fatuma Hussein. I'm with the Immigrant Resource Center of Maine. We've been working on this project initiative for a little bit over 2 years. And I will pass it on to Laura, who's going to do the bulk of the presentation, and I'll fill in as needed. And there may be some City Spirit Council members who are also listening and on the webinar tonight. So thank you, Laura, to you.
Oh, thank you, Fatuma. Thank you so much, Lewiston City Council. We're really excited to present this work to you tonight. So if it's okay, I have a short presentation, a little visual. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. You should see a pretty brain in the background. And we'll start the slides. All right. Great. So I am Laura Ligori. I'm the executive director of MindBridge, which is a Maine-based nonprofit. And we have been working closely with Lewiston Auburn residents in the creation of an equity statement. And this has been done as a collective enterprise through an organization called City Spirit LA. So before I dive into the equity statement, I just want to go ahead and introduce City Spirit for those who might be unfamiliar, or maybe it's been some time from hearing about City Spirit. So with that, City Spirit. It's an initiative that started a few years ago, actually. So it's been around for some time. And it's the joining of community leaders, elected officials, educators, students, and beyond for the common purpose of identifying concerns and challenges that exist within the community, and then together to collectively develop solutions to overcome them and move the community forward. So it's very collaborative and integrative of different community members. And it's interesting that it had been around for a few years, and it was reignited again at the beginning of the year 2020. So conversations were reignited at that point, and some thoughts around developing an equity statement, which the timing was particularly interesting because we were right on the precipice of entering into the pandemic. And for all the reasons that we know far too well, the pandemic obviously exacerbated divisions and differential experiences, poverty, education, the way in which it impacted Black and Brown communities. And so in a way, this restart of city spirit at the beginning of 2020 couldn't have been at a better time, because in having conversation about equity, we were able to really do it that much more so as the pandemic unfolded. So it was really interesting timing. And with the reignition of city spirit, that saw a whole host of people to come together for this purpose of identifying challenges and solutions, and particularly to take on the task of forming an equity statement. And quite a number of people, and it's worth sort of naming them quickly so that we know the breadth to which people have been involved in this. So City Spirit members are currently Bobby Avery, Lewiston Public Schools, Tracy Blaisdell, Lewiston Public Schools, our mayor, Mark Hare, City of Lewiston, Nora Condit, a middle school student, Phil Crowell, City Manager, City of Lewiston, Dennis, oh Dennis, I'm gonna do a bad job on your last name. I'm so sorry, he's smiling at me. yeah, I'm not sure.
Laura, City Manager, Auburn, Phil Crow.
Yes, City, oh gosh, yeah, sorry about that. Virginia Diorani, Lecturer Education Department. Peter Elias, James Ford, Joel Furrow, Aaron Gway, Aisha Hall, Lewiston Public Schools, Fatima, Jody Hayashida, Maria Kerouac, actually a student in Auburn, Holly Lasagna, City Councilor in Auburn, Michelle McClellan, Chief of Police Jason Moen, Auburn Police. I could see that Auburn was removed. Abdi Kadir Nageye, Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services, Hillary North Elisante, Chief Brian O'Malley, Megan Parks, Joseph Philippon, Catherine Ryder, Sheila Sitkins, Kirsten Walker, Brian Wood, and beyond. So many people coming together to do this work around creating an equity statement. So this became the focus. An equity statement, it's worth talking about too, why focus here in an equity statement. An equity statement represents our collective values, our aspirations, our vision for creating an ever more welcoming and equitable city. So for many, this forms the foundation. It's the collective bedrock by which future planning and action then springs from. And in a way, for many cities, an equity statement serves as that city's North Star. So it's meant to be a living document that people come back to over and over again as policies, procedures, and programming is designed to move equity work forward. And in the creation of an equity statement, it seems like a straight ahead enough process, but it's actually wildly complex, and it takes some time and commitment to do well. And so this became the work of the City Spirit Council, which unfolded really from June through until the completion of the statement you have before you. So here are some components of that process. And so it all started with workshop and awareness building. How one person defines equity is going to be different than the way a different person defines equity. There might be a realm of experiences and orientations. Maybe some people have had some experiences in life while some have others. There might be some who have more knowledge on topics related to diversity, equity, inclusion than others. So for all these reasons and beyond, it became exceedingly important to develop a shared language and understanding. So in order to develop a shared language and understanding for all of the members of the City Spirit Council, we developed a string of trainings. And these included topics such as implicit bias, power and privilege, poverty and trauma, community healing, among others. So this took place from September through December of last year. From that foundation, now we're ready to get started. We're ready to start writing, which is an interesting process, developing a collaborative drafting process via Zoom. So normally you do this on a big table with paper. So I think we created some new techniques here, which is really fun to see. And in this process, we were developing the building blocks. Right? So what are the different components that we want to have as part of this, but we want to be able to establish our key values. What are the values that underlie this entire process? How are we collectively defining equity? And ultimately, what are the components? When we distill down to a statement, what are the components we want to make sure are here and present? This took place from January and February, so not that long ago. And once we had the components, MindBridge took those different components and synthesized it together into our first draft. And now we've gone through 6 drafts of this statement. There's been lots of iterative processes around this, but we started with draft number 1. And after we had the draft, it was time to take this to the community. It was time to take this beyond our Zoom meetings and the members of the City Spirit Council to see what the public thought. So with that, we went into this realm of community outreach. Now it's COVID. Normally we would have a street team and we would get out and talk to people, but we want to be able to ensure social distancing and make sure everyone was safe. So we focused our efforts to online. So we built a website and built out a pretty robust social media presence. We also partnered with The Corner, which was really fun and continues, to create a series of community conversations and storytelling so people could share stories about the way in which they envision and experience equity. And then finally, we created 2 focus groups at different times to give us feedback on the drafts moving forward. And I think some of you probably saw that written up in the Sun Journal. After all of that work, we walked away with this beautiful document that I hope city councilors that you have in front of you. And it's worth, for those who don't have this statement in front of you, I'm going to go ahead and read the final draft of the equity statement together. City of Lewiston equity statement. Here is our proposal. The City of Lewiston is committed to equity. Through intentional, continuous reflection and action, the city and our community systems, including education, employment, healthcare, housing, law enforcement, businesses, and beyond, are dedicated to addressing and dismantling systems of inequity while working together to build resilient and accessible communities where people of all cultures and identities can thrive. We acknowledge that without an intentional focus on equity, we will continue to perpetuate and deepen inequity, injustice, and harm. The City of Lewiston recognizes that those struggling with the impacts of systemic and persistent forms of discrimination, poverty, and lack of opportunity continue to be stigmatized, marginalized, and excluded from accessing institutions and quality services needed that promote health, safety, and well-being. Equity in the City of Lewiston requires a steadfast commitment to one another. The cornerstone of safeguarding equal opportunity is the ability to access resources, municipal services, and educational programs regardless of identity, wealth, or social standing. Equity is fair and inclusive for all members of our community, ensuring that equal opportunity exists and voices are heard and valued from those traditionally underrepresented. Here, the city endeavors to create an environment where everyone is treated fairly, respectfully, and embraced, regardless of their race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, gender identity, marital or familial status, immigration status, sexual orientation, age, economic status, disability, or other individual identities expressed and experienced. The City of Lewiston has a pivotal role in achieving these goals and creating a sense of welcoming and belonging for everyone. We work together to create an equitable environment for all. It's our hope that the City Council, at the time that's right, will accept this statement as part of the city fabric and join with us to move this work, moving it forward. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. Fatuma, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Laura. I just want to say this. There's been a lot of energy, effort, and really visioning that took place in the last 2 years plus to get us to where we are today. And so this couldn't have come better than, this is the right time. Everything about the equity statement, the vehicle to drive this work, the voices, the people came at the right time, at the right moment, at the right time for our community, for who we are. When I came to Lewiston, we had only 3 Somali families in 2001, February 4th, 2001. 20 years of my life, I have worked so hard. And now, although I live in Auburn, I've always promoted the name of Lewiston. That's where my office is. That's where we do a lot of work. And I too is here today asking for the support of the city council members here, not only supporting, but also giving us feedback, but also involving yourself in this work. This is who we are. This is the fabric of Lewiston. This is the future of Lewiston. And together we'll have a very good place to live in. So thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Okay, thank you very much, both Laura and Fatuma. With that, I'd like to open it up to the council for any questions they may have or clarifications or even comments. Councilors? Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I want to thank you, Laura and Fatuma, for joining us tonight, and for the work that you and the council have put into this and representing the community so well. I think it's a wonderful statement. I think what was key for me as I was listening to this was just the intentionality, because some of the stuff you want to be able to take for granted, but you can't. So I think what I appreciate about some of the language contained within is exactly that, just the intentionality of the points made. So just wanted to commend you on the work that you're presenting.
And Councilor Khalid.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Fatuma and Laura, for this great work. As you all know that not just as a council member, but my personal life, I'm always working towards racial justice and equity in every sector that I come about. I just have few questions. I think I'm a little bit confused on the timeline of this work. I feel like it has been going on for a while. I've heard like City Spirit for a long time in this equity statement. So I'm hearing like it's been happening for 2 years, and is that correct, or has it been happening since September to December of 2020?
So City Spirit's work was happening since July of 2017. I want to say 17 or 18, 2018, sorry, 2018. And it started with work around what are our issues? As Lewiston, what are our issues? What are the social issues that we have in our city that hinders people's progress, whether it's economic development, whether it's buying a home, whether it's obtaining a job, and all of that. And as we were going through this work, and City Spirit actually has a City Spirit report endorsed by the Department of Justice. And so there are about 6 top issues that were identified. And as we were doing this work, Lewiston School Department wanted to do work around equity statement. And so it was the Lewiston School Department that actually introduced the equity work to us. And so we sort of paused what City Spirit was going to do to pull back and really look at an equity statement that will then inform not only the city of Lewiston, but also the work that City Spirit will do and all of its partners, you know, the community agencies and the partner agencies that do all the good work in our community. And therefore, we sort of paused, and then really that's when we brought in Laura and her group to then get us into this whole entire process of developing an equity statement. And so that's sort of the trajectory and the timeline. And so when we say City Spirit existed for a little bit over 2 years, that's very true. But somehow halfway there, we had to stop and pause the work that we were doing, which is identifying issues and really like poverty, you know, economic development, housing development, stuff like that, substance abuse, youth programming, all of those pieces were what we talked about. But then we were told that an equity statement was needed. And so we said, oh, that's really even better, because if we develop an equity statement, then we can collectively get there. And so you're right. There's a confusion about when City Spirit actually started, but then it was the beginning of 2020 when we said, okay, we're going to pause the report of City Spirit and we're going to take on this path of an equity statement, which really re-energized a lot of people. And that's where we are today.
Thank you. My other question is, did any like this initiative or City Spirit or the statement, did any of this work get funded? And if yes, how much?
City Spirit's work generally before wasn't funded, but when Laura came on, sorry, Laura, Mindbridge, when Mindbridge came on, there was a price tag to that, and that price tag came from the Sewell Foundation. So the equity development work and maybe a bit of sort of transitioning into, now that we have an equity statement, what do we do? And Laura's helping us with that. Laura, I can't remember what it was, maybe.
Yeah, between all the months in trainings and building the statement and community outreach, and now the transition period, it's about 45,000-ish that we're looking at for the price tag. Yeah.
And was fully funded by the Sewell Foundation.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Councilor Clee? Okay, thank you, Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Yes, first I just want to say thank you to Fatuma and Laura for the presentation. It was wonderful, informative, succinct, very good. And please pass along thanks to the entire committee for the group's work. It's just wonderful, you know, honestly. It's forward thinking. It's good for the city. I feel like in Lewiston, we're kind of at a point where, you know, we're shedding the former Milltown identity and we're kind of deciding what we want our identity to be as a city. And so as we do that, we want to be forward thinking, and equity statements like these, I think, really much align with that and send the message to places elsewhere that Lewiston is a place that you want to be. You know, we think differently here. We try to be a forward thinking. And I think this is evidence of that. So I'm really happy to see the work. My only question would be, I guess a couple questions. Is this statement considered like the final that you'd want us to adopt? Or is there a chance that it could, you know, maybe changes would be made at some point? And if this is final, is there any like expected timetable for us to be like looking to adopt this? I guess might be a mixed question for Mr. Dote and presenters.
You know, I'll simply say, I don't know that there's necessarily a timeline, but our intention based on the conversation this evening, and if there is support, this would go on the next city council meeting, which would be March 16th for adoption. You know, again, as long as we continue to hear that positive support from the council and no need for edits or any kind of wordsmithing or discussion like that, then our intention would keep it on the process of like we typically would and have it at the next regular meeting.
Okay. And I guess I would add that I am supportive of it.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Jensen. Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Laura and Fatuma for your time tonight, and to the whole committee. Laura's already heard this, but I have some sticking points on the equity statement. And I think the first one kind of became more pointed, seeing that there was a replace Auburn with Lewiston in the PowerPoint tonight. And I continue to believe and continue to hear from constituents that we are two different communities with two different populations and two different sets of goals. And that is pretty consistently reinforced in the experience I've had. And so to Councillor Jensen's point, I think some additional wordsmithing on our side of things might be helpful to make this clear that this is the city of Lewiston's commitment, and maybe not as much of just a rubber stamp on the really good and really important work that has already been done. But I think we are a unique community, and that deserves recognition. And then a question from moving forward from what I anticipate would be adoption of some version of this, perhaps this version of this. Will there be any sort of information or ongoing support from the City Spirit Committee for adoption moving to action? I think, I try to live my life by an equity lens and make decisions myself as a counselor, as a person. But I think that becomes a different conversation when we're talking about budgets and policies as well.
Thank you so much. And I do agree that Lewiston is unique, definitely special to me and in my heart. If it wasn't for Lewiston, I wouldn't be where I am today with my family and my children. So I appreciate that note. Yes, so City Spirit Council is fully committed into being the vehicle of driving some of this work. Now, it is important to also note that City of Lewiston and also City of Auburn will have almost two different paths around implementing the equity statement itself, and that will be, definitely supported. Then we've been talking about what that will look like within a school department, within the police setting, within the city administration setting, and all of the partners that work in Lewiston. I'm thinking of the nonprofit organizations, all the different programming, the business community, the youth programming, all of those. Yes, money is always a sticking point. And our hope is we've done a lot of groundwork in integrating this work into the vision of Sewell Foundation. So Sewell Foundation is a funder that has been looking at our area to really focus and make a 5-year commitment kind of thing, where they have identified through a lot of meetings with so many partners in Lewiston, 5 key areas, and one of them is equity. And so with that in mind, we think, and I'm not speaking for Dennis, but I think there is a way to both implement the work, support the work, and also secure funding for the work. And so I don't foresee us trying to come to you and saying we need to do A, B, C. It may happen. I'm not gonna, I need to be honest about that and be upfront, because part of I think holding ourselves accountable and committed to this process is also investing in it. It's investing in it. So you can't just have a piece of paper and have equity on it and not be willing to invest in it. So I think so. To me, I think it's all of it. But from where I sit right now, I'm very confident that the work can move forward with City Spirit as a vehicle to work on this, but also bring in the resources that Lewiston needs to really move this work. And so part of, in my head, I have a very, very busy head, a lot of energy. I'm like, okay, what about an equity, position that can help move some of this work? And so I think there's a lot of conversations that we have to do, but I think the mechanism and the vehicle to drive this work, including the resources, are already in place.
I think that's really helpful as we reflect on some other presentations we've heard recently. The mayor's ad hoc committee did come forward with a position recommendation, and we've accepted those recommendations. I think once this statement is done and settled on our side of things, revisiting the budget when it comes up in a couple weeks through this lens and making sure that, the city is really committed to the branding effort since we voted it in. Once we do this, I think that same level of commitment, I would expect that going forward from every member and every level of staff in the city. I just would also put up a flag now that I think the Lewiston School Committee, of which I'm also a member, might have a lot of wordsmithing edits to throw at us based on hearing from a couple who have seen the draft so far. And again, I think in the way that I was distinguishing between Auburn and Lewiston, I think the public schools department has its own opinions and its own thoughts about how to move this work forward. So just a cautionary note there.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. I think the intention is to come to the Lewiston School Committee and sort of work through that process too, and really present this and seek for the support. I just want to note that it was the Lewiston School Department who put us on this train of developing an equity statement. And so, and now there's an equity statement there too. So to me, it's the more the better, because I think we can integrate all of this and work through it. I just want to underscore how much progress and vision and how far we've come. And so I think we're all on the same page when we say we're committed to equity and really, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. To me, the equity statement development is nothing compared to how to implement, what to do, and the work ahead of us. And so really, really appreciate deep gratitude to all of you on supporting us and helping us and maneuvering us in the right direction so that City of Lewiston can be City of Lewiston and have its own identity.
And I'll just add to that briefly. And thank you so much, Fatuma, for that, and Councillor Ray. And I'm trying to remember which focus group you were in, whether you were in the first one or the second one.
I think it was the first one.
It was the first one, okay. And so between the first one into the second one, there was a paragraph that was brought to us by Bobby and Aisha that was the Lewiston Public School Equity Statement. So there was that paragraph, and it was originally inserted into the original drafts. And then what we're finding in this final draft is that we pulled it out because it was so school specific that we decided that it was really best to bring this back to the schools so that the schools could focus on the school equity statement. And so I have iterations of that saved separately for when, as Fatuma mentioned, we'll go back and talk to the schools individually so that we can kind of continue that process there. But yeah, we decided to kind of pull that out so that there could be a separate process for the Lewiston public schools specifically. So thank you so much for bringing that up. It was a really important point.
So, Councilor Ray, you mentioned, trying to make it more unique to Lewiston. And so what are your suggestions for that? Do you have suggested additions that you'd like to send off to city administrator, or what are your thoughts on that?
I don't have anything prepared at this moment, but I think it's just surfaced that I think it's been a critique of the process, developing a statement for a really wide breadth of use. And so I can go back to folks who have expressed that to me and see what they particularly are looking for as well, but I don't have anything at this moment.
Okay, and I wasn't expecting to say something this evening, but I will just suggest to councilors that over the next week, if we could try to get any recommendations to our city administrator, because out of courtesy, we should at least, if we're going to make some changes, I doubt we're going to redact anything or take anything out. If anything, we may add something, but we really should provide an opportunity to get it back to the city spirit, just so that they can look at that and not give the okay, but hopefully they'll feel comfortable with anything that we add, which I'm certain they would, because if anything, we hopefully could strengthen it a little bit. I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge our police chief for reaching out to DOJ to begin with when that started the work of City Spirit. And I think, I think folks from our Somali community reached out to him and they kind of had discussions, but I think it was the chief that made that initial connection. So that's much appreciated. But I've watched some of the meetings that folks who were committed to this attended many hours. Just they devoted so much time to City Spirit over the last 2 years, and even more so in the past year when they started working on the equity statement. I don't believe that's gone unnoticed by any city councilor here or any community members. So thank you all City Spirit members or City Spirit Council very much, because a lot of good work was done. Much appreciated. All right, so with that, I see in general pretty strong support from councilors. So I think we'll work with our city administrator. Any changes, we'll make sure we get that off to you folks for your review. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And let me just quickly go to the audience to see if there are any members of the audience that would like to make a comment. If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Fatuma, for joining us this evening. Okay, so next we will be going into an executive session. So I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Khalid, seconded by Councilor LaJoy to enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 4056C, to discuss an economic development issue of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city. Call the roll, please.
Sure. Counselor from Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Yes.
A motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, and with that, for the public notice, we will be returning at approximately 7 p.m. to take up our regular meeting items. All right. right, everybody, welcome back and thank you. So I'm just going to quickly just go over a couple of things. Oops. All right. So this session will be conducted remotely and council members will only participate electronically. Public comments on any item appearing on the agenda may be sent to public comment at lewisdomain.gov prior to adjourn the meeting, and all comments received will be forwarded to the city council. And with that, hold on a second, I just gotta get my papers in order here. Okay, yeah. Update from the city actions regarding COVID-19. Dale, is there an update?
There's not much one. We're back to full force. We're not on split shifts and things are going well.
Okay, and there was a press release by the hospital today in reference to the vaccination site. Do you want to touch on that?
Yes, I think it's March 17th. There's a press release by the hospital to open a mass vaccination clinic at the Auburn Mall. And spinoffs from that, we're working with other health community leaders trying to make sure that all parties are served within the city of Lewiston. So we're working behind the scenes with lots of entities, making sure we understand where people are being served and bring service to them in some mechanism.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes for February 16th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
I will be abstaining from that vote.
okay, Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, thank you. We're at the public comment period. Any member of the public may make comments regarding issues pertaining to Lewiston city government and these items that are not on the agenda. 3 minutes are allowed. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment? If so, you need to raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Roll call votes.
Sure, all roll call votes for this meeting will begin with the Counselor of Ward 6.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 1, please.
Item number 1, order authorizing continued negotiations with Bates Mill LLC on the extension of the Bates Mill 5 option agreement and the first amended and revised parking agreement for the Bates Mill complex. Requested action to approve the order authorizing continued negotiations with Bates Mill LLC on the extension of the Bates Mill 5 option agreement and first and revised parking agreement for the Bates Mill complex.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councilor Jelinas. Was that a second, Councilor Ray?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Seeing none to the public. Back to the council. Call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 2, please.
Item number 2, public hearing and order approving the establishment of the Bates Mill 5 Tax Increment Financing District and Program. There are 2 items for requested action. The first item is to open and hold a public hearing on the proposed Bates Mill 5 Increment Financing District and Program, and that does not require a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the public hearing is now open and we'll have a brief presentation by Director Jeffers, I believe. And unmute.
There we go. Actually, I'll tell you, Misty and Heidi have been the ones really working this, crunching the numbers, but to encapsulate it briefly, this TIF district is providing a mechanism that will allow us to take whatever new investment occurs in the Bates Mill complex and use it to fund infrastructure improvements needed related to that project. The parking garage is the single largest one, but all of this is sort of best guess as to what might happen. We don't know what investments are going to be required. We know that Mill Street at some point is going to need to have improvements. We know more parking is going to be needed down there at some point. Exactly when that happens, the time frame on it is still very much up in the air. There's been some recent investment in Mill number 1 with both Grand Rounds expanding and Northeast Bank relocating and taking something that was in Mill 2. So there's some recent investment down there. Some of that's already on the general fund, but that has not yet been captured. We'll be able to utilize. And then any other investment that happens in the Bates Mill complex or in Bates Mill number 5, all of that will help fund future infrastructure investments. With that as a backdrop, I would turn it over to Misty and Heidi to sort of work through some of the details.
Great, thank you so much. So we do have a couple of slides that we're going to go through with you. So Heidi, if you can put up the screen share. Great, so good evening. Misty Parker, Economic Development Manager, and with me is Heidi McCarthy, our Economic Development Specialist, to go over the summary of the proposed Bates Mill 5 TIF district. So the proposed TIF district and program being discussed tonight is an opportunity to capture the increased assessed value in the Bates Mill complex as it's redeveloped that will support funding parking infrastructure and brownfields cleanup in the mill to support the redevelopment of those mills. The district term would be for a total of 25 years, and it includes, the district would be made up of 8 parcels. That includes Mills 1, Mill 2, and Mill 5. So the Mill District, Bates Mill 5 District would be located in the downtown. Next slide. Here you can see the 8 actual tax parcels that would make up that, and the locations of Mill 1, Mill 2, and Mill 5 that would be within the district. So the financial projections for the development program utilize the following assumptions. They include a flat mill rate. The increased assessed value is based on developer projections in phase development over 10 years. Actual development is subject to market conditions and other factors. As Lincoln had mentioned, you know, this is an estimate of what could happen, but there are no guarantees. We use the best information available to us to make these forecasts. It's a conservative forecast. It does begin with capturing the most recent investment that happened in Mills 1 and Mill 2. That's the Northeast Bank renovation that just occurred in Mill 2, and the expansion, or the second expansion of Grand Rounds in Mill 1. That will likely be completed over the next year. It projects the remaining 94,000 square feet in Mills 1 and 2 to happen over the next 7 years. Mill 5, the pro forma estimates that for the 360,000 square foot building, that the first phase would be completed 5 years from now, and the mill would be completed in 10 years. So over the 25, so over the 25-year term of the TIF, the total revenue that's projected that would support the development program, which is our parking infrastructure and the brownfields cleanup in the mills, is approximately $21,900,000. Heidi, could you bring up the full pro forma? a tough document with all the numbers, but I think it's important. This pro forma is also included in the TIF application. That's also part of the council packet tonight. And this shows the total increase in assessed value increasing throughout the life of the TIF as development is projected to happen. One of the things to highlight is that any debt that's incurred for our infrastructure or brownfield cleanup may not be covered fully in the first few years of the TIF. That's because development is just beginning within the TIF district that would be eligible to be captured, and those debts are likely higher than what those revenues are in the early years. Therefore, the time those debt payments would need to be covered by general funds. However, over the lifetime of the TIF, we would be able to cover the full cost of the debt should everything develop as projected. It's just important to highlight that the early parts of the TIF will only generate a smaller amount of revenue. So then we can go back to the presentation. All right, we can go on to the next slides. So while covering the debt in the early part, tax shifts. There we go. I gave Heidi the hardest task tonight. So while the TIF will generate a smaller amount in the early parts of the year, first few years of the TIF to cover that debt, overall, the benefit of the TIF will be the revenue, the tax sheltering that occurs with these tax shifts. So in total, over 25 years of the TIF, the city would save approximately $8.8 million. That would be about $240,000 in county taxes, 1.8 million in revenue sharing, and 6.8 million in education funding. And that is due to the sheltering of that increased value within that TIF district. So there are benefits from doing the TIF district program. With that, are there any questions regarding the proposed TIF district?
Councilor Ray.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much to the economic development team for all of this really helpful, handy information. I am remembering in the back of my mind and just wanted some clarification. Is there a limit on how many TIF districts or how much land they cover for the whole city?
Yes, there is. So it is a total of 5% of our total assessed value. Cannot be more than, we can't have more than that included in a district. And what's the percentage for acreage?
It's actually 5% of the land acreage as well. So it's, yeah, it's 5 and 5, and we're nowhere close on our cap on the original assessed value. We have a very large TIF district that was done several years ago out near exit 80. I want to say there was a 400+ acre park, which honestly has not been generating anything yet. I mean, it was anticipated for retail at exit 80, just as retail was really starting to crumble, and then COVID hit it even harder. But the district is there. There are no actually development programs in place within that. Even with that there and adding this, we still have a couple of 100 acres that we could use for TIF districts. So I think we're at 3.5%. Heidi, you probably updated that more recently than I. That was sort of the number I remember. We were about 3.5% of our acreage is in TIF districts. Is that accurate? Do you recall?
3 1/3, 3.33.
Okay.
That's super helpful. And I think too, thank you, Link, for sending along the recent or not so recent, I guess, tips that we have, and knowing that kind of the intention is they kind of roll off and then other ones might come online. I think that's probably to our benefit as well. So thank you for all this.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? All right, we'll turn it over to the public. This is a public hearing, so anyone from the public can make comments or ask questions. Okay, seeing no public comments, we'll close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion for the second part, if the clerk could just read that.
Sure. To adopt the order approving the establishment of the Bates Mill 5 Tax Increment Financing District and Program.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
Is this a 1 or 2 vote?
it's a 1 vote.
Thank you.
Yep,
So moved.
moved by Councilor Ray. Moved by Councilor Ray, seconded by Councilor LaJoy. Any further questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Councilor from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Jeffers and Misty and Heidi. Good presentation, much appreciated.
Thank you for the support.
Okay, agenda item number 3, please.
Item number 3, request to extend Rise Op Cooperative Housing option to acquire 186 Blake Street and to amend the option to add 84 Walnut Street and 94 House Street, excuse me, to the properties to be optioned. Requested action to authorize the city administrator to execute the attached first amendment to option agreement with Rise Op Cooperative Housing for them to acquire the city-owned 186 Blake Street, 94 House Street, and 84 Walnut Street, and to execute on the city's behalf documents necessary to effectuate sale of the properties if the option is exercised.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor Jelinas. If I remember correctly, we recently had a pretty in-depth workshop on this, but probably if we could just have a very brief recap.
Sure. Raise Up last year started on a new housing project, went through the planning board process as the design is hired a construction manager. It was for a 9-unit cooperative housing project to be built at 186 Blake and some neighboring parcels. They had bought or had an option to acquire 186 Blake for $5,600 from the city. They couldn't ultimately pull the financing together for it. There was a significant grant that they just didn't hit the top tier to get funding. At that point, they regrouped, decided to pursue 4% low-income housing tax credits as a better way to fund this. For tax credits to work, you need larger projects. 9 units just don't work. So they started looking for alternative sites. The 94 Howe and 84 Walnut Street is what they chose. It's very similar. They'll be able to put a 9-unit building that'll look very, very similar to the one that's already been approved by the planning board. All this meets our choice neighborhood planning initiatives, infill development, more home ownership opportunities. And so they approached the city about acquiring it and offered, I'm trying to find the price, $29,620 is what they would like to acquire it for. The option on 186 Blake had just expired. Talking with the city attorney, said, let's just renew the option, make all 3 parcels be part of it. They can acquire all 3, which is their intent. But if financing doesn't work out as they plan to, they could buy just 186 Blake or just the Walnut and House Street parcels. And the option would be contingent upon them getting the various regulatory approvals they need in financing. If all those things come together, we got 18 units of cooperative housing downtown.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Seeing none to the public. Back to the council. Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to say I'm certainly supportive of the motion here. Raise Op is a great organization. They've done a lot of good work in our city, and they're only looking to improve the neighborhood in my ward. So very happy to see this on the agenda and hope this goes forward.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Counselor from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Jeffers again, and thank you, Misty. Agenda item number 4, please.
Item number 4, order authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deeds for real estate located at 1248 Sabata Street, 325 South Avenue, 184 Old Lisbon Road, and 145 Old Lisbon Road. Requested action to approve the orders authorizing execution of municipal quitclaim deeds for real estate located at 1248 Sabata Street, 325 South Avenue, 184 Old Lisbon Road, and 145 Old Lisbon Road.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Ray. And I believe probably Director Hunter, do you have something to present on this?
No, these are your traditional quick claims that we issue once the balances are paid in full and we're ready to release it back to the owner.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? To the public? Back to the council. Call the roll, please.
Council from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5.
Item number 5, reports and updates.
Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the school committee met last night and we received our budget overview, trying to lift this binder with one hand. And just wanted to get you all a little caught up on what has been proposed and kind of some questions that were asked of me last night. I warned the mayor that I would be a little bit longer tonight, so my apologies. But generally in the budget that has been presented to us, I'd say the first thing in the memo that we got was that this budget as proposed does not meet the needs of our learners. And that is from the superintendent saying that. So a troubling start, I guess. And you all should have binders in your council boxes. And I passed mine along to Dale already. So this proposed budget would raise the mill rate by $1.46. Just some context for that, last year, you'll remember that the school department bailed us out a little bit because they received CARES Act funding. While we were going through the budget process, the city didn't, and in an effort to get to zero on the tax rate combined, they took a 41-cent hit to that budget. We have expenses rising around 7%. There's contractual obligations factored into that. Debt service, that's a big part of that. That was through the voter approved high school expansion. And then there's the needed increase in support to English language learners. And there's a lot of stuff that has already been cut from this budget that the superintendent brought forward in an effort to be responsible. But the sentiment from many members of the school committee, and of course we have not taken action or really dove deep into the line items yet, but the sentiment that was expressed by individual members and that I think will carry forward through our budget process is increases to this proposed budget instead of cuts or flat. So those are conversations we've yet to have, and we'll have them over the next, I think it's 4 weeks. But I did want to give you all just a sense of that going forward. I recommended to the members of the committee that I, of course, will will carry messages back and forth. Happy to do so. Have been doing it for 4 years now. So I will, of course, continue to report out to you and report back to the school committee. But I did ask that folks connect with their ward representatives. So you might hear from them in the coming weeks about things as the budget moves forward. And I think the last part is, I think that they want to focus on education for the council and for the public about what is going on in this budget and how it's going to meet the needs. So I'm hoping it will be a good working relationship moving through this budget. I know the timelines are a bit off from when we see our stuff, and Director Hunter leads us through that process, but just wanted to give everyone a sense of that and an opportunity to ask questions. Anything I can bring back to the school committee might be helpful at this time.
Councilor Ray or Director Hunter, I'm not sure who might have this answer. Do we know what percentage increase that they're recommending at this point? It looks like Heather has that at the tip of her.
Mr. Mayor, are you talking about the percentage increase of the tax rate or the expenditures?
The increase of the overall budget, percentage increase.
For the school budget, they are increasing 6.95%.
And that translates to $6.2 million.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Any other questions or of Councilor Ray from councilors? And I suspect we'll have these on a pretty regular basis. Councilor Ray is very good at sharing progress through the school committee. So thank you, Councilor Ray. Anything else on reports and updates from you, Councilor Ray?
No, that's it for tonight.
Okay. Any other reports or updates?
Mr. Mayor, if we could just remind everyone that we're seeking applications for citizens to serve on the Charter Review Committee. That press release went out on Monday, so folks are encouraged to submit applications for review and consideration. The filing deadline for those applications is Friday, March 12th by close of business, which is 4 p.m. and applications are available on the city's website. And should anyone have any questions, they're welcome to contact the city clerk's office.
All right, thank you. And I shared this evening with the city clerk appointments to a small list of committee members, and it is notable that the forest committee board has been filled for the first time in at least a decade, I think. Just okay, so last item on the agenda. Any other business councilors or others may have relating to Lewiston city government? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilor Clement, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Call the roll, please.
Councilor from Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
and Ward 5.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thank you all very much.